nuts. Well, if you go to preferences on the top left, you should be able to detect it.
Yeah, but that's, yeah, it will. Are you cool if I start recording, by the way?
Do
Yeah.
what you gotta do.
It will. That's the thing, is like, it'll come up. I'll select it. It'll say like, sure, whatever, MV1, like, go through, and it will like feedback perfectly. And then whenever a guest comes on, they start talking. It's always, you can't hear me. And it's like, fuck, but
Oh, that's annoying.
whatever, man. It's not the end of the world. I'll figure it out. All right. Well, I have superlatives for like most of my guests. Like, one of these guys, he's this like bald English dude. He wrote a book called The Drug User's Bible.
Mm-hmm.
He took like 157 different drugs. And like, he was like the strangest guest. He's like a sweet old man. I had on a former Delta Force guy who's also a CIA mercenary. He's definitely the most like badass guest I've ever had on. He's like Jason Bourne. You're definitely like the coolest. You're definitely the coolest, because like, you know, you're an incredibly talented writer. You're very eloquent. I follow your Instagram religiously. You're incredibly positive. But normally it's like the universe will hand you, like, you get like one or the other. It's like you can be like intelligent and well speaking, but you're gonna look like a goblin. Or it can be, you can, I'm heterosexual, but you can be like a muscled, handsome dude. And then you get both. And it's kind of pisses me off. I get a little jealous, but you're definitely like the coolest. Not to just completely like begin with like jerking you off, but like, yeah, you're definitely the coolest. But for everyone that doesn't know you, you are John Romanello. You're a best-selling author. You are, I believe, health advisor to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Was at one point, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen your writing on Onnit.com. Everyone knows Onnit through Joe Rogan. And but how I know you is you're an incredibly positive person who openly talks about mental health online. And as someone that's lost a sibling to suicide, and as someone that has gone down that road a couple times myself, and who has lost multiple extended family members to suicide, I always love how you approach it. And to tie back into kind of how I started this was, it's always refreshing hearing it from someone like you. Because, from the first standpoint, it's like, okay, here's this like handsome dude who's successful. He can write like a motherfucker. Like, everyone loves him. And then you can hear you discuss your battles with mental health. And it's like, no one is immune. It's not, it's, my older brother was doing research with Georgia Tech and had a smoking hot girlfriend, and he took his life. And it's, to me, it sort of shatters any, not the assumed stigma of, mental health as a stigma, but rather you would see someone like yourself, or like my who's ironically named was John. And you always think, well, no, not that guy, what could he have wrong? Or, Robin Williams. It's like, well, what could he have going on? And then it's like, dude, mental illness comes with, and it fucks everyone with the same dick with no preference. It likes to fuck over lives, period. I'm babbling on without letting you said a word. How about you introduce yourself, man? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I appreciate it. It's a delicate topic, and it's difficult to know. So, for those listeners who don't know or don't care, or haven't to this point cared, or don't want to Google, as Tommy mentioned, my name is John Romanello. I am known in certain circles for different things. I got my start many years back in the fitness industry and started a very humble blog based on the name of my personal training company, which was Roman Fitness Systems, which grew into an online personal training company and very large content site. Then transitioned into my second company, Wellspring Media, which is more of a business and consulting firm. We work with small to mid-sized businesses, entrepreneurs looking to build their business or their platforms. We work with brands who are interested in establishing brand narrative. And as a facet of that, one of the arms of that is writing mentorship. And I help people write books, particularly people who have an existing platform. I have worked with everyone from Arnold Schwarzenegger, as you mentioned. I've worked with doctors and lawyers. I have worked with any number of fitness professionals. And it's been an interesting, circuitous journey, which has had at various points pivots that now in retrospect seem inevitable, but at the time certainly seemed surprising and unexpected. And one of those was a pivot into mental health advocacy and being very open about my own struggle with depression, suicidal ideation, and a number of attempts on my own life. And within the context of this conversation, I think we'll probably focus a lot on that. To touch on what you said, mental health does not discriminate. It does not, the outward perception of a person is irrelevant to their inward perception of themselves and whatever might have happened in their life or whatever may be happening as a result of brain chemistry. And there are people like Anthony Bourdain who, to the outside world, has made it to the pinnacle of his career and is known across the world, gets to travel the world, eating good food, being in, the coolest places, doing the coolest things, is universally loved and regarded by his fans, and it helped create a genre of television. I think in a lot of ways, Tony created vlogging, and none of that mattered. When you're alone in the wolf hours of the night and the demons are attacking you in the ways that only they can, all that matters is how you get them to stop. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar disorder, mental illness is the disease, and suicide is how it tends to kill people. That is the manifestation of it. And the thing about which I speak is really helping people feel okay sharing their experiences, because I think that is important. It does facilitate conversation and allows them to feel less alone. And the other part of it is helping people who themselves do not suffer from any of those conditions. Maybe after reading my stuff or hearing some of my stories or the stories of others I help share, they may have some greater insight into what the people they care about are experiencing.
Mm. It's such a weird thing, because it always feels like the first hurdle is getting people or the public at large to like even admit that it's a real thing, and not just like toughen up, suck it up. But then the next thing is like no one really like people that do admit that it's real. I remember when I was in one of my lowest spots, one of my best friends texted me, and he was in it. I mean, I've known him almost my whole life, and he was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know anything about this. He's like, I'm blessed in that I wake up with a smile every day. He's like, I don't know how to help you, but like, I want to help you. He's like teach me how to learn. And it almost took me back, because I was like, I never had someone kind of be so open. Most of the time it's convincing people that you're not just being a bitch, right? It's, one thing I always compare it to is like, as a biology major and someone who got into medical school, apparently I can't go an episode without saying that because I have to stroke my own ego. But I always tell people like drinking and driving is illegal, right? Yeah, I wouldn't want to drink and drive. I'd lose my job. Okay. Would you take 10 shots and then try to drive a half hour to Walmart? No, I wouldn't. Why? Because I'm going to get fucked up. So, okay, so we're on the same page. You acknowledge that taking this liquid into your body is going to be absorbed, go past the blood-brain barrier and fuck you up. Okay, so what is that? At its base level, it is just what? It's just a molecule, right? Ethanol. So we both agree that a physical substance is going to change your mind so much it could fuck you up. So now you must agree that just a balance in neurotransmitters could also fuck you up. And if you are open to the idea that alcohol could make you smitten or loud or angry, well, if you are open to that and concur that that's true, you then have to be open to the idea that any chemical can cause any outcome. And again, to you, you might be saying like, Tommy, why the fuck are you saying this? But it's you kind of have to like walk people into it to be like, you experience it. If you've ever smoked pot or drink, you know that matter, the tangible, can affect the intangible, the subjective experience. And so why couldn't it just happen natively instead of taking in a substance? So yeah, and that being said, it's not it's not unique to any individual, you know. It's not There are things in your life that can definitely, you know, from the outside, you know, where everyone feels it. Your girlfriend broke up with you, you gained a bunch of weight, you lost your job, whatever, you feel like an idiot. But there's nothing on the outside. It doesn't manifest itself as like, you know, horns or like a droopy face. Like like I said, you know, someone as successful as Robin Williams can have it. Or again, like yourself, someone to look at you and be like, that guy, like, you're not weak. Like you're clearly not weak. But it can very quickly go to, well, he doesn't manifest anything as weakness. How can someone like him possibly suffer from it? So that being said, you had posted a while back about your experiences with ayahuasca, right? Was it ayahuasca?
Mhm.
Would would you like to talk about that? I wanted to ask you about that. How is that?
Is is there a question in there?
that
Um,
well,
what
okay. Okay,
what's the
sorry. Yeah, that wasn't really a question. Hey, man, ayahuasca? Question mark. Yeah, no, I've done psychedelics on 4 occasions in my life, and they have all been extremely beneficial to my long-term mental health and in what I want to do in life. You know, the first time was right after I graduated, and I realized I didn't want to do medical school. The next time was a couple months after my brother took his life. The next time after that was the 1 year anniversary of when my brother took his life. And the next time after that was brought me to the realization that like, holy shit, I'm a powder keg of like suicidal ideation. Like I need to move home. I need to seek help. They've all helped me on massive levels. And they've always, you know, despite how scared I am going into it, you know, what is this going to do? How, you know, am I going to have a bad trip? It's always been beneficial. And then completely I become a hypocrite. And then I look at something like ayahuasca and I look at that as like the big daddy. And I'm terrified of it. But at the same time, I feel like if you can, I mean, it's kind of like, it is the hero's journey. It's like, if you can walk in there and slay the dragon, like, what do you get out of it? And I think it's important to ask you about that because you're someone that on a lot of levels I can identify with. And so
Mhm.
I can almost vicariously experience it through you, if that makes sense. Well, because you know,
I'm
you
not
hear
sure.
other people talk about it, and it's, you know, I can't really relate to it. It's a 50-year-old shaman
Sure.
from the Amazon.
I
So
mean, I'm not sure that anyone can relate to anyone's ayahuasca experience other than to, you know, have like a very surface level understanding of what that other person went through because it is so internal, like all psychedelics. Um, for the listeners out there who may not have an understanding, psychedelics or entheogens are a class of drug that uh, what they do in terms of your experience is they lead to your ego dissolving, which
mm,
means an ego, I you know, by that I hope everyone understands, I don't mean conceit or arrogance. Ego is the Latin word for I. So it's the part of your brain, of your psyche, that recognizes itself as an independent entity. So operationally, the dissolution of the ego means you lose your object subject relation. And the more that you take, the more profound and extreme that effect is. But there's still a part of your subconscious that recognizes itself as an individual or as a part of as a conscious thing, and so now it can analyze you objectively. And from a medical perspective, psychedelics, you know, if you don't want to think of them as spiritual if you just want to look at them as chemicals. They activate a part of the brain that is not normally active. This leads to activation of the cerebral cortex, and it affects the way that you perceive light, and you see everything from fractals to optics behaving differently, what people consider hallucinations. But all of them are useful in the right contexts, and their purpose as medicine is to help you heal or to allow yourself deeper knowledge of yourself. And the dissolution of the ego is necessary for that, because our ego, our understanding of the self, is not just this outward facing thing that we're like, okay, that's who I am. My name is John, and this is where I am, and all that. It's also our understanding of ourself, and we are meaning makers, and we give all of this credence to the experiences we have, and we can't view them through any eyes other than our own. And when you take ayahuasca or psilocybin or LSD, they manifest differently, and you'll have different experiences of each of them. But on a sort of surface level, they allow you to be objective about the subjective, and you get to see yourself as a character or as an independent third party, and that allows you to look at the things that have happened to you and move through them. With regard to ayahuasca, I went to Costa Rica to do this at a place called Soltara Healing Center. The ceremonies were 3 days in a row. They were led by two shaman, a maestro and a maestra. And I've detailed that. If you're interested, you can go to johnrimanella.com/Aya, AYA, and I have an article or an essay about that, which contains links to not one but two podcasts I did about it with my partner Amanda. And my experience was challenging on the first night. I took enough that I was able to have a partial ego dissolution, and that is challenging because you still are you, but now you are looking at all the things you've done or experienced in a new light, and so they're very fresh. The second night I had a deeper and complete ego. Nope. Second night was I took less of the medicine. That was much gentler, and then the third night I really blasted off, and I went through a lot of stuff. There's not a lot I can say about the experience of ayahuasca that hasn't been said by others or that I haven't said before. It isn't radically different from the experience of mushrooms, if you've used that, at least in that, like, at the end afterward, you will feel similar. Like 2 or 3 days after, you can feel pretty much the same, depending on your dosage of mushroom. Yeah. The thing that makes ayahuasca sort of special unto itself is the way that it is delivered. It's a tea brewed from the vine and the leaf of a plant, and when you drink it, you almost always have a gastrointestinal reaction to it. And so mushrooms are they're known for giving you like gut rot, which is basically you eat them and then the next day, like you have some tummy trouble, and like you'll burp a lot, and maybe you'll have some bowel issues, either loose stool or diarrhea or something. But it manifests the next day. And so your mushroom trip is like, yeah, I'm like a little burpy, but this is fine. When you take ayahuasca, the thing that even people who don't know much about psychedelics know about ayahuasca, they always ask, like, did you shit yourself? Were you vomiting? Yeah. Like, yes, mostly everyone vomits. They give you this bucket, like as you're in ceremony, into which you are supposed to vomit. And that is part of the ceremony. You don't have to vomit. You are the response of the human body to this particular compound is to vomit. That's, you will sweat, you will have snot, you will cry, you may shit yourself. I don't think anyone shit themselves, but you may have to like run to the bathroom and go. Yeah. You have cognition, and you can move, you can locomote under your own power to get to the restroom.
John?
Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, no, you just froze up. Yeah, you said move under your move. Still get to the restroom. Yeah.
You can still get to the restroom, but purging is part of it. And I think that when people who have done other psychedelics look at ayahuasca as like the granddaddy, although that's an incorrect name, it's the grandmother.
Okay.
Ayahuasca is it's a female plant.
Okay.
A lot of that fear is just stuff that it's detritus that you pick up and get stuck in your head from all of the people who just talk about the vomiting.
Okay.
It's a 4 to 8 hour experience depending on how many times you dose, and during that experience you're probably going to puke.
Yeah.
And but in the the level of psychedelic experience you have and the intensity of it is not going to be different than the level or the intensity of the psychedelic experience you can have on mushrooms at
Okay.
a similar dose. So I have, just for the sake of helping with quantities, a standard dose of mushrooms most people consider like a full dose, like a full medical, like plant medicine trip, is 3.5 grams.
Mm-hmm.
A hero dose, what's called a hero dose or heroic dose, is 5 grams.
Yeah.
I have been in mushroom ceremonies where my first dose is 10 grams, and then my second dose is 8 grams, and then my third dose is like between 4 and 5. So I've gotten up to like 22 to 25 grams, and that level of psychedelic experience,
Yeah.
I would say, is roughly comparable to my third night of ayahuasca, where I took 2 full cups. And so the devil's in the dose, as they say. Ayahuasca and psilocybin are different plants, and they have different effects. Mushrooms seems to have a more grounding effect. It's this experience of being sort of brought into yourself and into the earth, whereas ayahuasca has a more dissolving effect, and you are simultaneously brought into the earth and into the stars, and more at one with the collective consciousness. And it sounds very, very weird to say, and if you've never taken psychedelics, I want to just let you know there's almost nothing I can do to describe it to you in a way that will do it justice. I would venture to say that if you're trying to understand psychedelics from someone who is explaining it, I possibly do, a good job, but imagine trying to explain the color red to someone who was born without sight. Imagine trying to explain sex to someone who has never had it. Yeah. You can do your best and use nouns and adjectives and verbs, and to some degree give them an explanation, but there are some things that have to be experienced for you to understand them in even the most basic way. And so when I say ayahuasca is different than psilocybin because one brings you down into the earth and the other one brings you also into the stars, I don't know how to do it better than that. But my experience was very much looking at myself and my actions and the things that have happened around me and to me and for me, and just doing my best to sort through those while I don't have any feelings about them, and try to rearrange them in a way that allows me to live my life more effectively and heal and forgive myself. Ayahuasca is different from psilocybin because the ceremony itself is very, very structured. You are laying in a mattress, you're not allowed to interact with anyone, and that's not how I typically do psychedelic experiences. I'm more of a tribal person, and often it's a group of small people and we're talking to one another, and there is that. So you're very much doing your own work. Beyond that, I don't know what to say other than there's nothing to fear. So you referenced Campbell in The Hero's Journey. It's a great scene in The Empire Strikes Back when Luke is training on Dagobah with Yoda. And there's this cave from which dark side energy flows, and it's very cold, and Luke wants to explore it. And Luke goes to bring in his, he's belting on his utility belt, which has his blaster and his lightsaber. And Yoda says, "Your weapons, you will not need them." And Luke asks, "What's in there?" To which Yoda replies, only what you bring with you. And Campbell says, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. He elsewhere says that there are always guardians.
Yeah.
And in that particular case, what Luke is seeking is resolution and with his father. And so he runs into Vader, but when he is able to defeat him, he sees himself behind the masks, because what he really needs is first resolution with himself. And with ayahuasca, you are the only stuff that's there is what you bring with you.
That what you said about stepping outside and looking at them with no feelings, that it almost made me think of like, it's like surgery with and without anesthesia. It's like without it, it's like pre-Victorian era medicine. I read a book about, but they literally used to go in there and it'd be like a big guy would hold you down and he would literally just go in despite you screaming and trying to get away. You know, the best doctors were the ones that could do it the quickest, because the people wouldn't struggle and accidentally get, chopped up in ways that they weren't meant to. But then, come anesthesia, the entire quality and complexity of operations went through the roof because they could work for so much longer. And that kind of makes me think of like, when you have like a real anxiety attack or need something that takes a while to get into and you got to face it, it's like whenever I have an anxiety attack, I'm always like I'm already here. Like I'm already in the shit. Like try to grab something. It might not be the crown jewel, but try to grab something. You're already in here. You're already in the cold waters. Grab a jewel, something that you can come back and go, what was this about? Was this about the relationship with my dad? Was it about the relationship with my mom? Is it about substance use? Is it about, treating friends poorly? But you can only stay there for so long because like the fire is so great to the point where literally start hyperventilating and need something to bring you down. But from just what you said, that made me think of it. It's like you can almost go in and you're just looking at them as, it's like playing Operation, but you like disabled the buzzer. So you can literally go in and make mistakes.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, the first time I ever did mushrooms, it was 2 grams. It was with one friend. The second time was like 2 grams. The third time was 5. And the fourth time was a little over 20. And it was with 1,200 micrograms of LSD. And it was by myself.
That'll
Yeah.
melt your head. Yeah. So that's just so everyone knows, that is 12 doses of LSD and about 8 standard doses of mushrooms. So you're taking 20 doses of psychedelics, more or less.
I was not in a good place in my life, and I've never done psychedelics. They always say, be in a good spot. I always use them as like shit's hit the fan and you got to shoot the flare gun. You got to get the cavalry. I've always done them when everything in my life is coming to a head, because I'm like, what better way to go in there than to have the ultimate map? You don't want the ultimate map when everything's fine. You know where you're going. You want the ultimate map when you have no idea where you are. And
well, I hear you, and I respect that position. A reframe might be, maybe you don't have to wait for everything to come to a head to deal with some of these things. Maybe if you go in when everything is fine, you can sort out some of the issues in advance so that they don't all culminate in this really dark time.
Yeah.
You don't have to manufacture crisis in your life to allow yourself to do the work to heal.
Sure.
And that is something I learned. I don't have to manufacture crisis. I don't have to let things get bad and put out fires, because that's what I am accustomed to. That's what I grew up with. I can just like deal with it now. I don't have to let all the dishes pile up. I can just like clean the one bowl and it's fine.
That's, God damn, I needed to hear that. Yeah. Cause I would always kind of turn to them when I'd be like, shit's hit the fan, don't know what I'm doing. I was going to be a doctor. Now I'm not. Girlfriend's parents are kind of like, thought you were going to be a doctor. Girlfriend at the time. My parents are kind of like, thought you were going to be a doctor. I was in really good shape my whole life, and then gained a bunch of weight after I lost my brother. And it's like, well, shit's hit the fan. Like, what better way to?
Sure.
But yeah, even now, like I haven't done them in several years, and it's because, for the most part, despite the ups and downs, that I've told myself, like, I'm not at a crisis. I don't need them right now.
I think
But
that what you might be doing there is you are putting these medicines in a box, and you're like expecting them to fix. This is like an in case of emergency break
yeah.
glass. And while they can be used for that, like there are sometimes it is better to be proactive than reactive.
Mm,
You
mm,
don't need to create, again, you don't need to manufacture crisis. And I don't necessarily say they're like prophylactic, but um, they don't have to be this magic bullet where you're like, all right, I don't know what to do with my life. I'm going to take these psychedelics and figure it out. Because what if you don't? What if one time you take the medicine and it has no answers for you? Because many times we take the medicine and we go through the process, and then there's nothing there. And then you go back and you think about that experience 2 years later, and that's when you find the lesson. And my concern is the the process by which you are using these medicines can be a little bit prohibitive in terms of the timeline. Because
mm,
if you go in and you don't get the lesson right away, are you going to be in a worse spot? Because now you've exhausted the one thing you expected to provide the answers. And
yeah.
so it might be helpful, since right now things are relatively stable and going well. There's nothing, tumultuously wrong, other than the impending collapse of the republic and the
Yeah.
encroaching pandemic and
Pandemic,
the
global
financial
warming,
collapse of the country.
existential void surrounding us. Aside from those,
Aside from those things, which are, like, going on for all of us but not specific to you,
yeah,
it seems like everything's all right. So might be the time
yeah,
for you to just pay yourself a visit.
yeah.
And that is not, me suggesting that you do it. I'm just creating the option. I'm giving you like the permission that you haven't given yourself, that you don't have to. And this goes for therapy, it goes for psychedelics, and you talked about surgery. You don't have to wait until the wound is so bad that you
Mm,
can't move. You can just get something fixed. Like, we all do this. We all tend to wait until things are so bad we can't bear it. And this is a psychological function of humanity. Right? We're very evasive, and this happens with fitness. It happens with business. And we try and touch on it in copywriting and business. We really, what's called agitating pain within the context of business writing. When you're trying to get people to take action on buying a service or product, you you go in with the assumption that, like most people, the prospect reading this page will only change once the pain of staying the same has become too great. And so how do we increase that pain so they do this thing? And sometimes real growth is like not having to wait for it to get terrible. You can just do it now. You can just fucking fix it. You can just deal with it now.
that was brilliant. I was not. I was not at all ready to come into this and get some personal growth out of this, but I'm pleasantly surprised. Yeah. I think what you said is probably what hit the most. Give myself the permission. Yeah, there's sort of this, you know, yeah, don't go to, don't seek help until you got to call an ambulance. And yeah, and I wonder what the condition of that is. Like, is that a societal thing? Is that how I'm raised? It's, f- lift yourself up by your bootstraps until like you can't find your feet and then call help versus, it's like why our medical system is all about treatment versus like, well, what if you just learn to exercise and eat your fruits and veggies and take a multivitamin? It's
Sure, but I do think that a lot of it is cultural. We don't want to ask for help. A lot of it is uh, ingrained in our society, particularly how we deal with men and our perception of masculinity.
mm,
And we argue, as mental health advocates, we constantly are trying to overcome the stigma of there's, and helping people understand there's nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong with needing help. And that goes for everything. And it does, whether it's like, you just don't have to wait until things get really bad. You're allowed to ask for help, but we all do. We don't want to be a nuisance. We don't want to take up space. We don't want to bother anyone. We don't want to like be seen as weak or whatever it is for you in particular. And it can be any number of a dozen dozen different things. But at the outset of this conversation, we sort of entered into a world wherein we both want to help people understand it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to need help. None of this is wrong. No person does life alone. And that goes for you and for me. And if there's healing to be done, if there's work to be done, you don't have to wait until there's something terrible. You can just do it now.
That was fantastic. You should be a therapist, man. Kind of are, dude. That was brilliant. I'm having my own little like psychedelic, like, yeah. It's like the way I describe like figuring things out on psychedelics aren't like, it's not like you got some like supercomputer to figure out some like protein folding, simulation that you never could. It's like, it's not my analogy. I wish I could take credit for it, but it's like staring at an optical illusion and then you finally see the face.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, it was okay. And
right there the whole time.
Yeah. That's what I get from psychedelics. It's right there the whole time. That's what I'm getting from this. I'm getting from this talking to you. It's just this like, oh fuck. It's absolutely true. Like, if I'm starting to get burned out, it's like, don't wait till you're burned out to take a day off from podcasts. Like, you're feeling fried, like, take a day. Maybe don't hit the gym. Just take a day, breathe, take a warm shower. It's okay to not take a cold shower today. Chill out. Maybe have some Nutella, go nuts. But come back tomorrow. You don't need to wait until you're fried. I think, I think a lot of it is I'm still going on momentum from just being like a pre-med automaton. Back to the kind of, everything's relatively well, except for, that's how I always look at it. I'm like, everything's going good except for the part where I'm this like self-aware descendant of an ape living on a rock, flying through the void, and I don't understand what's going on, and no one does. And is this just a dream, or are we the imaginations of ourselves? Do we live in hell? Is this heaven? Aside from that, everything's good. Like, how are you dealing with quarantine? I talked to a therapist pretty frequently and have for several years. And what she said to me was, she said of her patients, she said my of everyone I know, she said it seems like my patients are actually kind of faring better than just the average Joe, because it's like, it's almost like the Hulk meme. Like, it's almost like I was born for this. It's like you've been fighting the demons every day. So when society shuts down, it's like, bro, this is the least of my problems. Like, I've been bare knuckle boxing with myself every day for 10 years. How are you dealing with it, just in general?
Like emotionally, in terms of my mental health?
Well, I mean, yeah, for someone like myself, on day one, I realized I was like, this is either going to like break me because I'm already admittedly just like fragile, or I was like, I can exercise every day. Let's make a goal. Let's lose 10 pounds. Let's get up 20 podcasts. Let's, read one book a week and just like, let's drill through this. And that's kind of how I'm getting through it, is just, it's almost like work so hard that this peripheral thing doesn't really compare to it. It's like, that's how I'm doing it. I'm just wondering, like, for you.
I just want to clarify what you're asking.
Sure.
Are you asking for my experience of it? Or when you say, how are you getting through it? Are you asking like operationally, what am I doing?
How are you, as someone who, I should have prefaced that, with someone who battles depression and anxiety, how is this complete shakeup of everything?
Honestly, it's, I'm largely unaffected by it in terms of my mental health. And to touch on what you were saying, because I grew up in an abusive household and because I suffer from mental illness, my nervous system and my psychological structure is conditioned to function in like very well in periods of high stress. Which is why over time, like in my life, I was like, oh, things are too smooth. I gotta fuck it up. I gotta like ruin this relationship. I gotta, whatever. because I always,
Yeah.
like hypervigilance and functioning in a heightened state of arousal. And so for me, because of that, you know, uh, level of conditioning throughout my life, this feels fine, and it feels very familiar. And I am more likely to have my breakdown after it's all, when things go back to whatever the new normal is, when we're not in quarantine, when people are back in public places. And like I'll probably, I predict, and I don't want to say probably, I don't want to, I predict I'm likely to have a pretty big emotional downturn.
Mm.
um, but I'm okay right now. I will also mention that in terms of the way this is affecting my life, I am pretty unaffected. I'm out in California at the moment, which is strange because I feel very disconnected from my home state, my home city of New York, and seeing how difficult it is for them, and seeing that, like, New York has had, like,
Mm.
my city has had 12,000 deaths, and
Yeah.
it's tremendous. Um, and so, I'm disconnected from it, but I think I'd rather not be there and witness the apocalypse in, a weird way, although I guess there might be some, if I really dig, there might be some guilt about not going down with the ship. But I'm largely unaffected. My business is online, and while all of my workshops have been postponed, um, they're not, it's only a couple months, and that's fine. And so, like, I'm probably, I'll make that income up other ways. I've taken on some new clients, and I am out in Cali with my dog and my partner and her dog, and we're not seeing anyone else,
Yeah.
but we're both working online. We've taken a little bit of an income hit, but it's totally manageable. And we're very privileged. We are very aware of our privilege, and that nothing has affected us directly. There's a lot of indirect stuff. My
Mm.
family back home in New York is very affected. My friends back home are very affected. But so as someone who works from home anyway, like, I haven't felt the need to be like, I got to pick up all these new hobbies. Like,
Yeah.
it's, I'm cooking more and I'm cleaning more, but I'm not getting dressed, and I walk my dog more to get out of the house.
Yeah.
But it hasn't required me to have any sort of radical shift in behavior. But being in proximity, very close, even closer proximity with Amanda, has created, a few moments of tension that have
Mm.
provided opportunity for us to just have deeper conversations and get better at communicating. And we certainly didn't go into this experience thinking, oh, it's going to be make or break for our relationship, because we don't think like that. We just never assumed that anything would be make or break, and it hasn't been. But it certainly has, like, given us tools that are very helpful. And I think that getting through this experience it's made our relationship, like, a lot more fun and strong. We get to just, like, be silly and hang out, and we're, like, playing games and do stuff we would normally do. And in the year and a half we've been together, we've had exactly 2 arguments. We've had a number of challenging
Skirmishes.
discussions,
Yeah.
but, like, only 2 times where we, like, argued, and they were both, like, over in 10 minutes. And so neither one of them was during this time. So it's been honestly really fine for me. It's been fine for Amanda. We're good. What's been hard for me is watching all the craziness unfold online, whether it is the conspiracy theories or the ridiculous bankrupt arguments that people are making with regard to, if you don't come out of this with a
Mm.
new
Yeah.
suit
Yeah.
set,
Yeah.
that
No.
whole thing.
I saw.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, so, it's like, it's always hard for me to watch people saying stupid things, but that's just one of the, that's the thing about being an American. And,
Yeah.
like, America is like everybody. America is the rest of the world's Florida, and I hate that
Yeah.
that's true, but it fucking is.
It's so
Um,
true.
and
Got money, guns, wealth disparity. It's just a fuck of a ride.
Yeah,
It's
but all to say, I appreciate you asking. I'm doing as well as a person can be doing right now.
oh yeah.
I have some new things coming in terms of, like, income and opportunity. Some things went out the door in terms of income and opportunity, but my mental health is good. I am cooking more. I get to walk my dog. I am like, in quarantine with my favorite person in the world.
Yeah.
And while I miss New York and my friends and all that, everybody there is like pretty safe and they're doing what they can do. So I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw your post the other day, and it was like, to everyone, like, saying like you have no excuse not to come out of this with a new skill. You're like, shut the fuck up. You're like, it is. And to clarify what I said earlier about, like, I got to do this, I got to list. That was like my own, like,
Yeah, that's for you. That's like, and if that works for you,
yeah,
great. Yeah.
that's how I
Yeah.
put a muzzle on my own insanity. I'm like, if
Yeah.
I have too much work to like, focus on like societal shutdown and collapse and, the existential void surrounding us at all moments, like, that's how I keep myself distracted. It's like a video game and the world's falling apart around me. But yeah, just in general, that whole, like, hey, like, shithead, I'm looking at you. Don't scroll past this post. If you don't come out of this learning, like, you don't know how to, like, play the cymbal or, like, weave baskets underwater. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, a lot of people's, like, older family members my cousin's girlfriend, her 2 aunts died, coronavirus, like, late 50s in New Jersey or outside New York. And it's like, dude, there are a lot of people. It's like, after 9/11, no one said, like, hey, asshole, life's short, you got to learn some new skills. It's like, dude, a lot of it's like, hey, like, we're getting through this. Hey, we woke up and another day is behind us. Good job, everyone. Like, that's what it should be. But it's, yeah, your post was like, society is at a standstill. You were like, shut the fuck up. Sorry. Yeah.
In fairness, my issue was not, it's not that I like fundamentally disagree with
Sure.
the position is false, but my position is not do nothing with this time. My position is that, like, those arguments are made incorrectly and they're a little bit disrespectful. I am almost always arguing against the way the argument was made and the phrasing rather than the belief behind it, because I think that everyone is entitled to their beliefs. I truly believe in the democratization of communication, but I also believe in the respectful presentation of ideas. And if you believe, so, to present, like, if you don't come out of this with more money or blah blah blah, you didn't lack time, you lack discipline. That operation, that argument is logically void, because many people don't have more time. Many people, in addition to now working at home, are also like full-time stay-at-home parents, and they're homeschooling their kids, and they have to care for people, and all of this other stuff. So the argument just doesn't make sense. And so my position was partially against the insensitivity of the argument, but also I was pointing out the logical flaws in the way that it was made. And that's a big part of my work, because and I think you can get there through therapy, you can get there through rhetoric, you can get there through storytelling, you can get there through psychedelics. Having the ability to get to a place of objectivity and kind of see, like, if I didn't feel this way about this thing and somebody just presented it to me as a neutral observer, would I still believe it? And sometimes, if you dig deep enough, you don't have an argument, you don't have a position, you just have a feeling. And that feeling is valid and it's okay. And I don't want to take anyone's feelings from them. But I do feel compelled to help educate people that there is a way that they can do some work and decide, like, yes, this feeling is me, and I projecting it onto other people and adding a value judgment to it is incorrect. And so if you happen to be unaffected by this crisis and you happen to have more time and you want to, this is a great opportunity to do whatever those things are. And if you have more time and are not affected and you don't want to, that's cool too.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole premise that, like, maybe some people don't have more time, and even if they have more time, the problem is it's not just like a time discipline version. It's like there are other criteria that go into it, like energy, money, and some of these other things. Maybe you have more time, but those other resources might be depleted.
Hmm.
And so that's,
Yeah.
that's the other piece as well. So I really just, my problem there, and the reason I was willing to make such a big stink about it, is because it was so outwardly dumb in terms of the way the argument was made. It was just a really easy way to kind of demonstrate this is a really dumb way to argue. This is
Yeah.
incorrect arguing. This is faulty rhetoric and faulty
Yeah.
logic, and there's just no benefit to anyone by doing that.
Yeah. That's what I love about your posts is it's not a reactionary argument against someone that's as baseless and as emotionally based as the initial argument. You're incredibly well written, and now speaking to you, you're incredibly well spoken. So that's what I like about it. Is I mean, I'm the example of how it shouldn't go. I'm like, fuck that argument, that's stupid, and you are very calm, almost like Obama-esque, like not going political, just ability to orate is fantastic.
Thank you.
Again, not to kiss.
No, but no, I appreciate it. I appreciate the acknowledgement because I've worked hard on that. But to be fair to you and also just transparent, my first response to something might be, that's fucking stupid, what's wrong with you? But I don't say that outwardly. The way that I approach just about anything is always write drunk, edit sober, which is, if I'm in a moment of emotional activation, I try to get all of that out so that I can go through and analyze, why do I feel the way I feel? What is my position? Do I agree with it or disagree with it? Is it activating something for me? And is there a way to say this that is defensible? Because I understand that his position is based on a feeling.
Mm.
So is mine.
Mm.
But I happen to be willing to take my position and my whatever it is I think is, quote, right, and push that through a nexus of like a rhetorical checklist, and then find a way to present it that is in line with argument and logic. And I don't I do not hope that everyone will do it. I don't waste hope on that, but it's the way that I like to take care of things. And that whether it's rhetoric or copywriting, there's great benefit to knowing how to do that. It will help you in your life, and you'll help when you're in your relationships. It will help you in your writing. It will help you in your podcasting, and it will help you in your self-development and your psychological healing, because there's so much value in being able to as quickly as humanly possible get to the moment of objectivity and just say, oh, I don't have a point.
Yeah.
I don't have a point. I have a feeling.
Yeah.
And then just work through that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens in the middle of a conversation with someone. And a number of times I've been in a what some people might call an argument with some people, and they say something and it just something clicks, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I didn't think of that. Nope, now I agree with you. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's such a helpful thing to be able to just fall into that and be like, oh, no, yes, I changed my mind. Now I agree with you.
Yeah.
And just most people are unwilling to be wrong in that way. And the more you study rhetoric and copy and therapy and all of that stuff, it gets you to a place of objectivity, because I'm not interested in being right to make someone else wrong. Sometimes I'm interested in peace. Other times I'm interested in consensus. Other times I'm interested in explanation, but I don't want to be right just to be right.
Yeah.
There's not anything there for me.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes, when it depends. Like in a case like the one we discussed, I don't mind being what's called heuristic about it. And heuristicism is a type of argument where you see it in debate, where you're like scoring a lot of points by proving someone wrong. And if my goal is to be heuristic, then, and it's not just because I want to like dunk on this person and tear them apart point by point, it's because I've entered into that conversation with an awareness. I will probably not change this person's mind, but the argument isn't solely about them. Similarly, like if I were in a presidential debate, I am not going to change my opponents. Like, if we're on opposite sides of this political issue, I'm not going to change your mind. But when I go through point by point and show you, and it's about the people watching.
Mhm.
And for the purposes of my audience and the people who I am trying to educate, if I'm being heuristic, it's because I want them to consider all of these points, not just because I want to tear someone apart.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of ways to do it. Sometimes my ego, I try to get out of it as much as possible, but I will openly admit that when I'm like crushing a debate, I am like, there's a part of me that's really excited to be doing so well, and that's okay. And
Yeah,
that's part of the work.
yeah, yeah. You play the position of like, yeah, of of competitor. Um, yeah, I was gonna say, talking to you in person as opposed to messaging. I don't know if you ever listen to or read any Alan Watts or Ram
Mm,
Dass,
yep.
but they talked about. I don't know if it was them or if they're quoting someone, but they're like, you can always tell when you're talking to. Again, apparently this episode, I'm just kissing your ass. But you can always tell to someone that is, that has worked on themselves more. It's like you can always tell because it's almost like it's like when you say or bring up reactionary things to them, it's almost like throwing a rock down a bottomless well. You're used to throwing it, and you're like, "Where's the crash?"
Mm,
And you're like, "Where is it?" And it doesn't spit the rock back at you. It's just you don't really know what to do. You can't get mad because they didn't actually do anything back. But and I say that in a positive way because I mean, it's something I would like to get to, and it seems, I'm looking at you, and I'm like, I feel like I don't know, I'm 29. I feel like, you know, maybe he was as batshit crazy as me at 29. Like,
Probably more so. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
and
been last 4 years in particular has been it's all the work is like the last 4 years. So if that
yeah,
helps.
it's, but yeah, I mean, I do look at it as like, man, that is like a level I would like to get to. Maybe it's just a beautiful presentation. Maybe you've just fine honed the facade, but you have a very confident, like, thought out presentation. And you said something earlier that, again, kind of shed light on something that I didn't even realize I do, but it is something I do. Mean, I mean, studied 7 days a week in college to get into med school. Got in a week afterwards, decided I didn't want to go. A couple months after that, lost a sibling to suicide. It was just years of chaos. Moved home. We'll do it. You go with like 5 more minutes. Yeah. Moved home. It was more chaos, and now it's been home for a couple years, and I'm finally feel like I kind of am getting things figured out, and like I'm in online graphic design school, working on this podcast. Relationships are getting better. I almost feel like I'm so used to insanity that there is a part of me that fears, like, what if I get this thing I've been working towards? What if I can make money off something that I love and be able to like move out and just live a normal 29-year-old life? Is there going to be like a certain tranquility? Am I just going to fuck it up because that's what I'm used to? And you said that, and I never thought about it before, but I was like, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my God, is that what I'm going to do? Like, is it, how have, how have you grown from that? How have you become less of an insane person like me into the seemingly balanced person that you are now, that I hope to become?
Mm. Well, firstly, it might be helpful to stop talking about yourself like that
Yeah.
and to stop referring to yourself as an insane
Okay.
person and to accept that the tendency you have, the patterning you have, you didn't choose it. You didn't just decide I'm going to be the type of person who thrives in chaotic environments. Uh, you have to acknowledge you're not thriving in chaotic environments.
Mm,
You are familiar with them. I'm a
mm,
big fan of the specificity of words. It's very important to me. And people misuse words often. Not words like saying literally when you mean figuratively, but we conflate words that can mean in different contexts similar things, but they're very different. Mark Twain said the difference between the right word and the nearly right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. And many times people use the word comfortable when they mean familiar.
uh,
So I don't think you're comfortable in chaos. I think you're very uncomfortable in chaos, but you are familiar with it. And
okay.
sometimes the familiarity is less scary than the unfamiliar unknown of tranquility, because what can happen there? I'll have to sit with myself. I'll have to be quiet. I
Mm,
will have to now do this work. And so am I likely to get this thing that I want and then, quote, fuck it up to create chaos? Possibly. You very possibly are. The first thing I would tell you is to realize that getting the thing that you want will not give you what you want or need. There's a great piece that there's a couple of pieces that I wrote about the hero's journey and how the prize is not the prize. Getting the thing that you want is a necessary step to realizing that it might not be the thing that you want at all. Ryan Holiday wrote a fantastic piece called like, what happens when you get everything you want? And the answer is nothing. He talks about how he was mowing the lawn when he got the email that his book hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And in the article, he quotes Oscar Wilde, who said there are two tragedies in life. One is not getting anything you want, and the other is getting everything you want. And the truth is, and I don't believe that you're at a place where you can accept this yet, but you will come to see this retroactively. The truth is, you may get the thing that you want and then realize that, like, the thing itself, the tangible thing, the podcast that makes money, career, whatever, those are things that you wanted, but they're not the thing that you need, which is this feeling of healing, of being okay, living a normal life, whatever that is. Maybe they'll allow you the finances to live self-sustainingly, and that will feel good in a way. You have to heal this feeling that, like, you're not good enough because you dropped out of med school. You said you bring it up on every podcast because you need to stroke your own ego. I don't think that's why you do it. I think you bring it up on every podcast because you need to keep touching this toothache and make sure it still hurts, because there are still people in your life who, for whether this is actually them thinking it or whether you think they think it and you're projecting it outwardly, that you messed up by not going to med school, you're conflating opportunity with obligation. Yes, you're smart enough to be a doctor and you had the opportunity to be a doctor and you could have gone to med school, but that doesn't, just because you got in doesn't mean you have to go. Just because you could be a doctor doesn't mean you have to be a doctor. Just because you had the opportunity to have a prestigious career and make your parents proud and give them something to brag about doesn't mean that you're obligated to do that. You are allowed to make the decisions you've made, and you haven't healed that yet, which is why you keep bringing up that you got into med school but didn't go. And so the healing that you need around having a career and being self-sustaining in terms of finances and your living situation, getting the thing that you want in terms of monetizing the podcast or having a career in design that allows you to do that, you're going to have to get there to see this. And then once you get there and it feels empty in some way, then you will again turn inward and heal that it is allowed. You are okay about not being a doctor. And with regard to, quote, fucking it up and the chaotic environment, you might do that. You might get there and you're like, okay, well, this didn't make me happy, and I don't know how to be happy, but I do know how to be activated. I do know how to be in crisis. And so I will manufacture that. I will fight with my parents, or I will gain a bunch of weight back so that now I have this new problem to solve. I will fuck up some relationship in my life so that I have to start my redemption arc of, like, proving that I can be a good person instead of just being one. And it is my hope that you don't do that, but I acknowledge you might. And it's important that you remember you are not going there because it's comfortable. You're going there because it's familiar. You do not have to manufacture crisis in your life. You do not have to manufacture chaos. You do not need a fire to put out to feel like you are productive. You can just be productive. That is allowed, Tommy. And you will either let this sink in or you won't. And if you need to go through that cycle 1 or 2 more times and then come back to this conversation, some things cannot be taught. They can only be learned. And experience is the bridge between knowledge and wisdom. And wisdom is always the lesson you need right after you need it. So I acknowledge that maybe none of this, saying any of this, will do the thing that we both want it to do. But I would be remiss if I didn't say it to you and tell you you're okay. And it's all, you can just do the things that you want. And that goes for you and anyone else listening. You don't have to hurt yourself. You don't have to hurt other people. You don't have to create new problems in your life, because what you're doing is just creating outward, external things to focus on, because there's something internal that's too terrifying to face. And at some point, you're going to have to face that, whether it is the unresolved stuff about your brother's suicide, whether it is the unresolved stuff like, if things are calm and I am sitting too long, am I going to get suicidal the way John was? Am I like him? If I have the good career and I'm good looking and jacked and have the smoking hot girlfriend, and am I still not happy? Am I going to do the same thing John did? If you check all the boxes that he checked and you're still not happy, what's left but to do the last thing that he did? And you don't have to do any of that. What you do need to do is turn inward and address some of these wounds, because if you don't solve the thing inside, you're going to keep giving yourself things to focus on outside. And you may manifest that by, quote, fucking it up, quitting, getting the job, dropping out of school, doing 15, 16 episodes of doing 100 episodes of the podcast, and right before it breaks, and then stopping and not monetizing and doing the thing, sabotaging yourself, walking away right before the finish line. You may do any of those things, and maybe you need to. That's part of the journey. Part of the journey is that you have to learn there's no skipping the lesson.
Dude, I'm legitimately, I'm trying not to tear up. That was, yeah, man. I'm gonna cut this part out. It's just me.
Yeah, take your time.
I really need to hear all that, man. Yeah. Again, I'm not gonna put this part in just because.
It's okay.
Fuck, man. I feel like I should be paying you for this therapy session. It's
just, here's another little piece of quotable knowledge. There are some things that can never be paid back. They can only be paid forward. I don't need anything from you. There's nothing that you are in a position to do for me that is going to help me as much as this conversation is helping you. So you have to pay it forward. At some point, maybe it's 10 years from now, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 20, someone else will be sitting there and you'll be sitting here, and they will need to hear some version of this. And as long as you carry this conversation in your head and in your heart, whether or not it helps you right now, at some point you have it with them and our debt is cleared.
God damn. John Romanello, 2024. The person we all need. Dude, you know what? I'm just going to upload the whole thing. That will help me with my own ego loss. Yeah.
I don't want to depart in the midst of such weighty
No.
You have to go.
10 minutes longer than you said. And
No, it's fine. So thank you so much for this conversation, for being vulnerable to me and to your listeners. I know they'll appreciate it. I know that you were thinking about cutting that part out, and I'm glad that you've decided not to, because there's so many people, particularly men, who are feeling the things that we feel, and they're sitting with the fear of letting the world see it. And so I think that you hear that, Lo? It's like, you just leveled up. Uploading this is you leveling up, and I'm proud of you. I've got to go.
Thank you, man.
I'm glad we were able to do this, and stay healthy, stay safe, and anything you need, man, reach out.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you. Take care. Peace.